Hey guys! Tonight we journey into the grand corridors of Versailles, where the glow of candlelight across the marble still carries the echoes of Louis the XIV's reign. Picture the hush that fell, the instant he wrapped himself in a blood-red velvet mantle, courtiers frozen, brimming with unspoken intrigue. If you believe you can stare down the shadowy secrets and outlandish curiosities lurking behind every brocade curtain without flinching, prepare to be proven wrong, especially by fact 55, which will leave you riveted until the very end. But before we set off, do me a favor if you're genuinely eager to delve into this story. Smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. I've unearthed 101 facts from a variety of accounts, some documented, some whispered through legend, and I'm curious which will you accept as fact and which will you deem mere hearsay. Drop a comment with where you're tuning in from, what time it is on your clock, and which revelation strikes you most. Now, lower the lights, cue the harpsichord overture, and let's uncover the most shocking and bizarre truths about Louis the XIV. The Sun King, they both revered and feared. Truth, one letter. C'est moi, I am the state. Although no contemporary document records Louis the XIV ever uttering this phrase, its spirit still shines like the first light of dawn. It was not an empty boast, but a public challenge to any prince or noble daring to share power. Throughout the Hall of Mirrors, when candlelight lay heavy in the mist, courtiers whispered of this immortal declaration, as if it were the overture to an era of absolutism. In that moment, there were no bars, no fences. He alone stood atop the political universe, and no one dared step outside its decree. Truth 2. A height of 1.73 meters. This seemingly arbitrary measurement became a spectacular display of authority. Standing at 1.73 meters tall, Louis the XIV compelled courtiers to augment their shoe heels just to look up at him. Each pair of elevated shoes was crafted not merely to follow fashion, but as a statement, those below must bow. And only the sovereign could command a straight gaze. During solemn ceremonies, the click-clack of heels on marble echoed like drumbeats, proclaiming an unshakable power. Truth 3. Baptized by his sole godmother. Born on the 5th of September in the year 1638, Louis the XIV was not baptized until 5 days later, in a grand ceremony presided over by a single godmother, his grandmother, Maria de Medici, a formidable woman unafraid to overshadow the entire court. She placed the first mark on the boy's destiny, the image of a 4-year-old child anointed in holy water, candlelight dancing on the marble floor, heralded the birth of a dynasty destined to eclipse all preceding crowns. Truth 4. Full authority at the age of 23. He officially ascended the throne at the age of 4. But true power did not rest on his shoulders until he was 23. Until then, every political maneuver and backstage intrigue was orchestrated by his close advisors, most notably the Duke of Mazarin, rendering Louis the XIV little more than a puppet. Upon turning 23, he tore aside the veil of regency and seized every decision himself. From that moment on, he ceased to be a shadow behind the throne and became the arbiter of the kingdom's fate. And any force daring to challenge him faced a steel-clad spectacle of royal might. Truth 5. The sun as his emblem. From his first court ballets onward, Louis the XIV chose the sun as his personal symbol, affirming his divine right to rule, carved in relief, painted on canvases, and woven into garments. His radiant halo bathed the palace in an aura of immortality. The sun, eternal and central to the cosmos, represented his unique dominion over all creation. When the first rays of dawn struck the Hall of Mirrors, Louis the XIV's image multiplied 100-fold, shining as the very source of absolutist power. Interesting truth. 6 dining in full view. Picture yourself drifting into slumber, as the grand table at Versailles is set under the soft glow of countless candles. Even the most private meals of Louis the XIV were not shielded behind closed doors. Instead, he insisted on dining in plain sight of his court, transforming sustenance into spectacle. Every silver platter arrived amid hushed anticipation, each morsel consumed under the vigilant eyes of officials whose sole charge was to guard against poison and to remind onlookers that every bite taken by the king belonged to the realm. In this ritual of transparent consumption, the boundary between personal need and public display vanished, leaving only the steady, unyielding pulse of power echoing through the hall. As you imagine the hush of cloaked witnesses and polished goblets, feel your eyelids grow heavy, lulled by the rhythm of spoon against plate and the solemn reminder that, under Louis the XIV's reign, even dinner was theatre. Interesting Truth 7. The rituals of courtly life now. With your thoughts as gentle as a falling feather, consider the daily ceremonies that governed life at Versailles. Each dawn began with lever, the king's public waking, where courtiers already weary assembled in trembling silence to witness him don his silken robes. By candle's light, they laid out every garment, powdered wig, and jewelled buckle in precise order, proving their loyalty through motionless devotion. Mealtimes followed, each course paraded forth like a royal envoy, every bite catalogued under watchful gazes. Finally came coucher, the ceremony of retiring to bed, as the monarch disrobed in full view, each movement recorded like scripture. No corner of Louis the XIV's day escaped the stage of etiquette, and every gesture reinforced the truth that his life, and, by extension, the life of France, was an unending performance. Let this meticulous choreography drift your mind toward rest. Each ceremonious click a soft drumbeat to lull you deeper. Interesting Truth 8. From hunting lodge to imperial palace. Close your eyes and imagine a forest lodge by the Seine. Its wooden beams, unassuming amid the pines of Ile-de-France. When Louis the XIV first arrived in the year 1661, he saw beyond the logs a canvas for his ambition over 2 decades. Artisans hewed marble walls from timber frames. Gardeners sculpted geometric parterres, and fountains sprang to life at his command. By 1682, Versailles had spread across more than 8,000 hectares. Mirrored halls multiplied his image. Corridors rivaled cathedral, naves, and gardens stretched like emerald oceans. Every stone laid was a testament to his boundless vision. Each reflection, a whispered promise of absolute authority. As the palace rose from humble origins, so too did his dominion, edge by gleaming edge. In the hush of night, let this grand metamorphosis carry you away. Each imagined echo of hammer on chisel, easing you toward dreams shaped by power and possibility. Interesting Truth 9. The Sun King, as Ballet Apollo drift, now into a memory of powdered wigs and gilded shoes. Where young Louis did not simply watch the ballet, he led it. In the year 1653, at the age of 15, he transformed himself into Apollo, god of the sun, clad in shimmering golden silk and crowned with rays. With each poised arabesque and measured sort, he blurred the line between monarch and myth, commanding both stage and state. Courtiers, enraptured, wept beneath the chandelier's glow, to aware that their sovereign was no distant figurehead, but a living deity. That evening, the palace floor itself seemed to tremble in tribute to his artistry. As you picture his graceful yet commanding steps, feel yourself enveloped by the soft haze of history, your mind softened by the elegance of dance and the promise of celestial dreams. Interesting Truth 10. High heels of authority. Finally, let your thoughts settle on the subtle click-click of heeled shoes on marble. Louis the XIV amassed over 70 pairs of high-heeled footwear, many gilded in gold leaf, others encrusted with precious gems, designed not merely to elevate his stature, but to enforce his supremacy. When he entered a room, every head bowed and every neck craned skyward to meet his gaze. Those heels spoke louder than any trumpet. They declared that under his reign, luxury was weaponized and fashion became a tool of dominance. In the stillness before sleep, let the memory of those glittering footsteps echo in your mind. Each tap a gentle reminder of the slender line between power's grace and its iron rule. Drift now into rest, carried by the faint patter of regal heels across the marble floors of Versailles. Interesting truth. 14 fraternal rivalry forged in ice. Let your thoughts drift like drifting embers as you imagine the gilded halls of Versailles shrouded in silent tension. Beneath the surface of opulence lurked Louis the Fourteenth's ruthless envy of his younger brother, Philippe. In a display as cold as marble, he slashed Philippe's allowance, ensuring it never approached the royal coffers, and vetoed any marriage that might elevate the siblings' standing. Philip, confined to modest fiefdoms and denied alliances with Europe's great houses, existed as little more than a shadow within the court's brilliance. By isolating his own blood, Louis the Fourteenth declared an unbreakable doctrine: no equal would share in his power, no matter the bond of kinship or the claim of birth. As the candles flickered in the Hall of Mirrors, one could almost hear the hollow echo of fractured loyalty, a reminder that, in the Sun King's world, family bows to supremacy. Interesting truth 11. The illusion of intimacy now. As your eyelids grow heavy, consider the myth of privacy at Versailles. Louis the Fourteenth's bedchamber boasted balconies overlooking his most intimate sanctuary, permitting any privileged courtier to witness his private rituals. Imagine standing mere feet away as sumptuous velvet cloaks slid from regal shoulders and crisp linen shirts were meticulously fastened at the wrists, every movement choreographed for effect. This relentless exposure served a merciless purpose. Courtiers learned that even the king's most personal moments were performances for their obedience. Stripped of seclusion, they stood powerless, under the unblinking gaze of their sovereign. In this relentless theatre, Louis the Fourteenth ensured that privacy belonged to no one but the crown itself. Interesting truth 13. Etiquette. As armament, let your mind float through the labyrinth of protocol, where every gesture at the royal table became a test of fealty. In the year 1701, a tome titled Le Grand Couvert codified the most minute details of dining etiquette at Versailles: which fork grazed which morsel, the precise fold of a napkin, the permissible cadence of conversation. Each rule served as a blade to cut through the unworthy, a wayward spoon lifted too boldly, a misplaced word whispered at the wrong moment, could brand a courtier as ignorant or disloyal. This manual weaponized etiquette, transforming every supper into a silent tournament where ceremonial mastery equaled proximity to favor. As the pages turned, the courtiers studied obsessively, aware that a single breach might cost them not just advancement, but survival in the cutthroat arena of royal grace. Interesting truth. 12 spectacles of power drift, now into the realm of fete and fire, where Louis the Fourteenth's soirees transcended mere celebration to become grand demonstrations of authority. When he hosted a fete gallantry, the palace lake morphed into a theatre of mock naval battles, complete with gilded galleys and musket flashes reflected in rippling waters. Overhead, fireworks bloomed in fleur-de-lis patterns as orchestras performed bespoke operas, their melodies weaving through the night air like silk ribbons. Guests, garbed in dawn-hued silks, glided through choreographed dances, blurring boundaries between monarch and subject. Each orchestrated moment, from the spark of gunpowder to the final bow, announced that his wealth and taste were unrivaled, proclaiming his dominion over both nature and artifice. In the hush after the last firework, the courtiers felt the echo to witness his grandeur was to acknowledge their own submission. Interesting truth. 15. The hunt for dominion. Finally, let your consciousness wander into the misty forests at dawn, where Louis the Fourteenth, despite the weight of years, mounted his steed to lead the royal hunt. Hunting was no mere diversion. It was a hallowed ritual affirming his dominion over the natural world. Even as gout and age gnawed at his limbs, he gripped his rifle and scanned the underbrush with unwavering gaze. Courtiers, breathless and desperate to keep pace, trailed behind, too aware that every stag felled under his command symbolized his unchallenged supremacy. In this sacred pursuit, the chase itself became metaphor as he tracked deer and boar. He reminded France that true power is a quarry that must be pursued relentlessly, and that the Sun King would hunt it to the very end of his reign. Interesting truth 18. The Grand Canal is a private lagoon. Imagine your thoughts drifting like lazy ripples across a still lake, as you picture Versailles' Grand Canal. Yet this was no ordinary waterway. Louis the Fourteenth conceived a personal lagoon more than 1,400 meters long and 80 meters wide. Not for commerce or irrigation, but simply so he could glide across its waters like a Venetian doge. Envision gilded gondolas, each draped in silk and crowned with pearl glass chandeliers, carrying the monarch in solemn elegance. Every weekend, he donned a gilt-trimmed uniform, stepped aboard his private barge, and presided over mock regattas, while courtiers paddled in tight formation behind him. In this watery theatre, the Sun King proclaimed that no republic's navy, no stubborn maritime power, could match the splendor of his reign. As you feel sleep tug at your eyelids, let the gentle lap of imagined waves carry you into dreams of mirrored water and royal pageantry. Interesting truth. 16 a 2,000-hectare masterpiece now. Let your mind wander through gardens so vast they could lull you into a serene haze. To carve a paradise worthy of his absolute rule, Louis the Fourteenth enlisted André Le Nôtre, a master of both geometry and horticulture. Together, they transformed Versailles' grounds into nearly 2,000 hectares of living embroidery. Picture parterres unfolding like ornate tapestries under the dawn sky, fountains erupting in synchronized splendor, and hedges sculpted into mythical beasts lining long avenues. Each meticulously planned axis directed the eye and the imagination toward the palace's central pavilion, reinforcing the idea that the monarch was the axis of the universe itself. By bending nature to his vision, Louis the Fourteenth sent a clear message. His authority reached from the celestial heights of his emblematic sun to the very soil beneath his subjects' feet. As your mind drifts, imagine the rustle of leaves and the distant spray of fountains guiding you toward peaceful slumber. Interesting truth 20. The furnace of summer ceremonies. Feel the warm tug of drowsiness as you recall that the grandeur of court ceremonies came at a tangible cost, especially in summer. Picture courtiers tucked into layers of silk, satin, and brocade, enduring temperatures soaring past 30 degrees Celsius. Thousands of candles blazed, hearths roared, and bodies pressed close together turned Versailles into a veritable furnace. Noblemen and women fainted in droves. Some collapsed mid-curtsy. Others toppled during toasts, or swooned at the very brink of royal sight. Despite the risk of heatstroke or humiliation, no one dared slip away. Absence meant forfeiture of favor, and possibly a brush with the king's wrath. Let this image of sweltering ceremony fade into the background as your eyelids grow heavy, each imagined drop of sweat slipping away in the cool comfort of sleep. Interesting truth. 17. The sun fountain's daily miracle. Drift now into the gentle embrace of morning visions, where the garden's sun fountain performs its calculated marvel. Precisely aligned with the palace's central windows, this grand jet of water catches the first rays of dawn and refracts them into a dazzling spectacle of light. Imagine droplets sparkling like liquid gold, casting beams across the marble floors of the Hall of Mirrors. This was no accident, but a deliberate ceremony as the sun rose each day. So too did the glory of Louis the Fourteenth, reaffirmed by nature itself in a daily ritual. Feel each shimmering flash soften the edge of thought, guiding you deeper into a sense of wonder and calm. As nature and monarchy converge in a quiet symphony that lures every wandering mind toward rest. Interesting truth. 19. a city made of fire. Finally, surrender to the soft glow of imagined candlelight, as you recall how Louis the XIV devoted a staggering sum, 1,000,000 livres each year, to candles alone. Thousands of beeswax pillars were hand-poured in royal workshops, polished and trimmed with gold leaf filigree. At dusk, legions of courtiers and servants moved in orchestrated harmony, lighting each candle to bathe every corridor, gallery, and chamber in warm opulence. The expense was unimaginable, yet the effect was undeniable. Versailles became a city of fire, an unceasing flame that symbolized burning ambition and unshakable authority. Even the darkest corners bowed to this relentless brilliance. As you imagine the subtle flicker of countless flames, let their gentle glow kindle a peaceful warmth within, guiding you softly into the night's quiet embrace. Interesting truth 21. Rosemary smoke as royal air conditioner. As you drift toward a drowsy reverie, imagine the soft hiss of burning herbs at dawn. Dampness lurked in every corner of Versailles, threatening tapestries and frescoes alike. So, Louis the XIV issued a daily edict. Bundles of freshly snipped rosemary must be set alight each morning. Picture servants strewing aromatic branches across corridors, stairwells, and private chambers, while a pungent blue-grey smoke rose and curled under gilded ceilings. The herb's sharp scent drove back moisture, preserving priceless art. But it did far more than that. It asserted the king's dominion over the very air his subjects inhaled. In this ritual, even the simplest sprig became a symbol of courtly authority, reminding everyone that at Versailles, not a single breath could escape the sun. King's meticulous command. Interesting truth 22. A marriage as meticulous as war now. Let your mind settle on the year 1659, when peace was forged with Spain, not on battlefields but at a marriage altar. Under the terms of the Peace of the Pyrenees, Louis the XIV wed his second cousin, Marie-Thérèse of Spain. In a ceremony choreographed with military precision, envision ambassadors in silk robes, stationed like generals around the altar. Each gesture of the royal couple observed and recorded for posterity. Every curtsy, every oath, every flicker of candlelight played its part in cementing a diplomatic victory more lasting than any treaty signed in haste. In this union, personal affection bowed to statecraft, reinforcing Louis the XIV's image as a sovereign whose private life was a seamless extension of his imperial policy. Interesting truth. 23. Bedding ceremony in the Grand Hall. Feel the gentle pull of sleep as you recall that even the consummation of this royal marriage became public spectacle. On their wedding night, Marie-Thérèse's marriage bed, draped in crimson velvet and trimmed in gold, was rolled into the Grand Hall of Versailles. Hundreds of courtiers assembled in solemn hush to witness the bedding ceremony, a ritual as formal as any court session. There, before the eyes of the realm, the new king and queen were united beneath the vaulted ceilings. Their union declared not in private, but on a stage of marble and mirror. This act transcended mere tradition. It proclaimed that even the most intimate moments of monarchy belonged to the state, and that privacy was a luxury reserved for no one but the crown. Interesting truth. 24. The tragedy of 5. Lost heirs. Let your thoughts drift to the heartbreak behind the grandeur. Over the course of his reign, Louis the XIV fathered 6 official children, but only one son, Le Grand Dauphin, survived infancy. Each birth had been heralded with cannon fire and festival fanfare, yet each death brought public mourning. Tiny coffins draped in royal cloth were paraded through Versailles in tearful processions. These parades of sorrow stood in stark contrast to the Sun King's ostentatious display of power, laying bare the fragility of human life, even under absolute rule. As you feel the weight of those lost little princes and princesses settle upon your mind, let their memories soften your breath and draw you gently towards slumber. Interesting truth. 25 mistress quarters behind velvet walls. Finally, let your consciousness drift through the secret passages of Versailles, where discretion was a privilege enjoyed only by the monarch. Louis the Fourteenth tolerated and indeed formalized his roster of mistresses by commissioning sumptuous apartments for them within the palace itself. Imagine ornate salons, private bedchambers, and secluded dining rooms hidden behind velvet drapes, constructed at the king's command to shelter his favourites without disturbing court protocol. The palace stones themselves seem to whisper of clandestine liaisons sanctioned by royal decree. In these hidden enclaves, adultery was transmuted into an instrument of power, a reminder that at Versailles, even morality bent to the sun, king's unchallenged will. Interesting truth. 26. Madame de Montespan's hidden dynasty. Let your thoughts drift into the hush of Versailles' night, where one woman's influence quietly eclipsed noble titles. Among Louis the Fourteenth's many mistresses, Madame de Montespan reigned supreme. By day, she moved among dukes and duchesses with unrivaled clout. By night, she bore him no fewer than 7 children in secret. Imagine the hushed corridors as midwives swaddled each newborn, concealing their arrival until they could be declared legitimate heirs and tucked into the royal nursery. These hidden offspring became living tokens of her favour, proof that her sway extended beyond whispers to bloodlines. In this lethal game of dynastic chess, childbirth served as both shield and sword, and Madame de Montespan emerged as a master strategist, her power woven into the very lineage of the Sun King's realm. As your eyelids grow heavy, let the quiet strength of her covert legacy lull you toward dreams tinted with intrigue. Interesting truth 27. The king as secret playwright now. Drift into the private library at Sceaux, where Louis the Fourteenth indulged a clandestine passion playwriting under a carefully chosen pseudonym. He penned several comedic works, filled with witty barbs aimed at the foibles of France's elite. Picture manuscripts bound in unassuming leather, each page brimming with satirical dialogue that might have scandalized court if revealed. These plays never saw the stage. Instead, they remained hidden treasures, shared only with the king's most trusted confidants. In moonlit sessions, these inner-circle friends recognized the royal hand in every clever line. By clandestinely crafting comedies, Louis the Fourteenth proved that even absolute authority could delight in personal indulgence. Yet he guarded these literary amusements as tightly as his crown, preserving the mystique that kept his court forever guessing. Interesting truth 28. The brief ban on Satan's brew. Let sleep tug at your mind as you recall the year 1670, when the king declared war on coffee itself, denouncing it as the bitter invention of Satan. He banned the dark, steaming brew from his realm. Imagine baristas shuttering their coffee houses in panic, delicate porcelain confiscated, and merchants scrambling to obey. Yet within months, the edict was reversed, coffee returned under royal license, and taxed for revenue. This theatrical prohibition exemplified Louis the Fourteenth's flair for dramatic gestures. He could decree the unthinkable at dawn and retract it by dusk, leaving his subjects breathless and perpetually attentive to his capricious will. As your thoughts weave towards slumber, let this fleeting prohibition remind you of power's theatre, where even a simple cup of coffee played a role in the sun. King's grand design, interesting truth. 29 walls that breathed science and splendor. Drift into the echoing halls where plaster of Paris wallpaper gleamed like ivory under candlelight. To protect Versailles' delicate frescoes and tapestries, Louis the Fourteenth introduced this ingenious wall-covering sheets of gypsum milled fine, pressed with arabesques and fleur-de-lis. Envision gilded reliefs rising from damp-proof walls, each pattern both an artwork and a moisture barrier, reserved solely for royal domains. This costly innovation showcased French craftsmanship and proclaimed that even the simplest utility wallpaper could become an emblem of supremacy. In your half-slumber, feel the smooth texture beneath imagined fingertips, a subtle reminder that the Sun King's dominion bent science to art in every detail. Interesting. Truth 30. The birth of the French Academy of Sciences. Finally, Let your mind be steeped in the pursuit of knowledge. In 1666, Louis the Fourteenth founded the first French Academy of Sciences to rival Italy and England. Imagine mathematicians, astronomers, and physicists gathered under his patronage. Laboratories humming with experiments in cartography and hydraulics. Each scholar received royal pensions. Laboratories, and the king's favour privileges that transformed Versailles into a beacon of enlightenment thought, their publications spread across Europe, bolstering France's reputation as a cradle of progress. As you drift toward restful sleep, let this legacy of inquiry comfort you even amid absolute power. The Sun King's vision embraced human discovery, illuminating minds as brilliantly as his fountains lit marble halls. Interesting truth. 31 portraits as flawless decrees. Let your thoughts drift as you envision Versailles' grand galleries lined with imposing canvases, each one of Louis the Fourteenth rendered in idealized perfection. He tapped Hyacinthe Rigaud, Court's premier portraitiste, to immortalize him again and again. Yet with a silent stipulation, any hint of a double chin or crease at the jaw must vanish before the final stroke. Imagine each brushstroke smoothing flaws into legend, transforming flesh into flawless icon. As you picture these oil-bound avatars, robes of velvet, scepter clutched, eyes unwavering, you sense that these were not mere works of art, but declarations of power. Each portrait whispered to every viewer that here stood a sovereign beyond doubt or defect. A celestial being draped in mortal guise. As sleep beckons, let the hush of canvas and pigment carry you gently into dreams of unreal perfection. Interesting truth. 32 wigs as tests of fealty now. Feel your eyelids weigh heavy, as you contemplate a decree so intimate it reshaped. Every courtier's morning routine natural long hair was banned at court. Under Louis the Fourteenth's rule, only elaborate wigs fashioned in towering forms could grace a gentleman's head. To dare enter the palace with your own locks unbound was to court censure, exclusion, even disgrace. In this precise fashion edict, the Sun King wielded appearance itself as an instrument of loyalty. By dictating every curl and coil, he extended his reign from law to personal style, ensuring that anyone granted his proximity wore not only silk, but submission. As the cadence of whispered yes, Your Majesté Fades, drift towards slumber, crowned by the quiet weight of powdered hair. Interesting truth. 33. The burden and glory of wigs. Let your mind float to a scene of courtiers in mirrored chambers, each bowing under the weight of masterpiece wigs, some tipping the scales at over 2 kilograms. Picture stylists bent over heated irons and scented pomades, sculpting curls and braids that rivaled sculpture in their complexity. These were not mere accessories, but summits of status. Only the impeccably coiffed could claim a place beside the Sun King. Each morning's ritual demanded hours of patience and the hands of dozens of artisans. As the final pins were secured, the towering wig stood as both burden and badge of honor. In the soft light of fading consciousness, let the memory of horsehair and human hair powder your dreams, a gentle reminder of loyalty forged in elaborate form. Interesting truth. 34. The barber, as keeper of secrets. Drift now into the hush of a private chamber, where the king, fresh-faced and resolute, entrusts his skin to one man alone, his royal barber. No other could approach Louis the Fourteenth with razor in hand. Only this singular craftsman held the privilege of shaving the monarch every other day. Picture the swift, precise strokes honed to surgical exactness. Each pass of blade, both delicate and decisive. In those moments of lather and steel, whispered policies and court gossip passed between king and barber, miniature councils veiled in suds. As your thoughts soften, imagine the faint scent of sandalwood and soap, the gentle scrape of razor on skin, each shave underscoring that even a flicker of stubble bowed to monarchical exactness. Interesting truth. 35 shattered mirrors, shattered secrets. Finally, surrender to the quiet as you recall a ritual of reflection and ruin. whenever Louis the Fourteenth departed a room. Every mirror within had to be destroyed. Servants armed with hammers surged in, smashing polished glass into crystalline shards. Only once every fragment was cleared and fresh glass installed could the king return. In this relentless cycle of destruction and renewal, mirrors became more than decor. They were potential betrayers of state secrets. By obliterating reflected counsel and private supplications, the Sun, King proclaimed that transparency would exist solely on his terms. As sleep's gentle tetheresis, imagine the soft crash of glass and the silence that follows. A lullaby of broken reflections guiding you into the depths of rest. Interesting truth. 36. A wardrobe of endless splendor. Imagine drifting into a soft reverie as you contemplate a closet so vast, it defies belief. Louis the Fourteenth amassed over 5,000 individual garments, robes of velvet, coats of brocade, waistcoats stitched with silver thread, breeches cut from the rarest silks, vests trimmed in pearls, and capes that trailed like liquid starlight. Each piece bore its own inventory number and trilingual label, catalogued meticulously by court clerks who recorded every fitting, every repair, every stitch. With each new dawn, he chose a different ensemble, a choreographed proclamation of supremacy that left courtiers scurrying to match his extravagance. In a realm where fine cloth was currency, his infinite closet declared in the most vivid terms that absolute power came with inexhaustible resources. As you feel the pull of sleep, let the image of those endless racks of sumptuous attire lull you toward dreams draped in velvet and silk. Interesting truth. 37. Labels that spoke in 3 tongues now. Let your thoughts drift to a scene buzzing with ambassadors, envoys, and nobles from every corner of Europe. Even his clothing signified dominion. Every mantle, every doublet was labeled in French, Latin, and Italian. These multilingual tags did more than prevent mix-ups. They broadcast the king's mastery over languages and lands alike. Picture a Portuguese envoy donning a satin coat inscribed in Italian. He would be reminded that Versailles reigned as the nexus of culture and command. Through this simple act of labeling, Louis the Fourteenth bound every courtier, regardless of birth or tongue, to a single unyielding standard: serve the sun, king, in whatever language he chose. As your mind drifts towards slumber, imagine the rustle of sumptuous fabrics and the quiet whisper of labels in 3 grand tongues. Interesting truth. 38. Makeup as royal armor. Feel your eyelids grow heavy as you recall that cosmetics at Versailles were no mere vanity. They were weapons in the unending battle for influence. Each morning, women courtiers skilled in powdered elegance applied the king's makeup, his face rendered pale as moonlight, his cheeks given the subtlest flush of rouge, and a single beauty patch affixed, just so to emphasize the strength of his jawline. Every brushstroke was a talisman, crafting an image so flawless that no rival could find a flaw. By entrusting his visage to these discreet artisans, Louis the Fourteenth transformed personal grooming into courtly warfare, reinforcing his unassailable mystique with each whispered sweep of powder. As you drift deeper into rest, let the delicate scent of rosewater and sandalwood carry you on a gentle journey towards sleep. Interesting truth. 39. A menagerie of marvels now. Soften your thoughts as you wander through a hidden zoo within Versailles' vast grounds. While other monarchs collected fiefs or titles, Louis the Fourteenth gathered creatures of the wild to adorn his domain. Monkeys leapt in gilded cages, parrots squawked courtly phrases, peacocks fanned their iridescent tails across manicured lawns, and, at the height of extravagance, a ring-tailed lemur arrived from Madagascar, its striped tail a magic ribbon in the sunlight. Each exotic pet stood as living proof of France's reach, a tangible testament that the world's furthest corners yielded to his command. These living marvels were not mere curiosities, but declarations that if land, law, and language bent to his will, Then even nature's most remote wonders answered only to the sun, king. Let the gentle rustle of feathers and the soft echo of distant calls guide you into a tranquil slumber. Interesting truth 40. The edict against spitting. Finally, I feel the hush of a palace corridor under candlelight. As you recall, a decree so intimate it reached into the body's most instinctive acts. Louis the Fourteenth banned spitting in Versailles corridors, a trivial offence. Perhaps, yet one that struck at the heart of decorum. Those caught expectorating faced fines heavier than any budget shortfall or military levy a thief might go unpunished. But a noble who dared spit would see his purse lightened by royal decree. This prohibition was not merely about cleanliness. It was a poignant demonstration of absolute control. Extending the king's authority into the air, his subjects breathed. By criminalizing spitting, Louis the Fourteenth reminded everyone that beneath layers of silk and gold, order and obedience reigned supreme. As the soft echo of your own breath lulls you, let this tiny ritual drift you gently into the realm of dreams, where even the air is held in thrall to power. Interesting truth 41. A stage built from royal coffers. Imagine your thoughts drifting like soft curtains as you picture the Opera Royal at Versailles, its gilt columns and frescoed ceilings gleaming under crystal chandeliers. Louis the Fourteenth invested his own fortune in this magnificent house, seating more than 800 guests within palace walls. No state funds tainted its splendor. Every stone, every gilded relief, every thread of velvet came from the sun, king's private coffers. On opening night, the curtain rose not just on music and dance, but on a declaration: patronage was prerogative, not charity. In this grand theatre, Louis the Fourteenth ruled both stage and state, proving that artistic legacy sprang from the sovereign's will as surely as rivers followed the land. Interesting truth 42. Sovereign critic of his own opera now. Let your eyelids grow heavy as you recall that Louis the Fourteenth did not stop at building the Opera Royal. He commanded its every note. He attended rehearsals in person, scrutinizing each gesture, each melodic flourish, each measured pause. A misplaced pirouette or a tremolo lacking fire prompted immediate revision, as though the very soul of the performance hinged on his satisfaction. Under his watchful eye, every aria and tableau bent to his exacting vision, transforming the opera into an extension of his sovereign authority. In the hush of this relentless oversight, imagine the soft rustle of silk and the echo of perfect harmony, coaxing you ever closer to dreams of regal precision. Interesting truth 43. Patents. Under the sun, king drift into a tranquil haze as you consider the year 1674, when Louis the Fourteenth extended his dominion into the realm of invention. He established France's first patent system, granting creators exclusive rights to their marvels, from ingenious clocks to novel distillation methods. Craftsmen once fearful of theft now found royal protection and reward, their innovations guarded by law. By monopolizing novelty itself, the Sun King harnessed progress for statecraft, ensuring that each spark of genius burned under his vigilant gaze. In the half-light of thought, picture inventors in candlelit workshops, their breakthroughs secured by his decree, a silent testament to power's role in fueling human ingenuity. Interesting truth 44. Mercantilism as a weapon of statecraft. Allow your consciousness to drift like a merchant ship as you recall Jean-Baptiste Colbert's mercantilist machine. Under Louis the Fourteenth's iron-fisted reign, Colbert slapped tariffs on imports, subsidized French silk, glass, and porcelain, and filled state coffers with customs revenues. Boats laden with fleur-de-lis, stamped goods sailed from Le Havre and Bordeaux, flooding markets at home and abroad. Exports soared, and the treasury swelled. But this prosperity served one master alone, the Sun King. In the soft cadence of this economic symphony, feel the rhythmic pull of tides and trade winds as commerce itself became an instrument in the crown's relentless pursuit of power. Interesting truth 45. Conquest at immense cost. Finally, Let your thoughts soften as you remember that Louis the Fourteenth's appetite for glory consumed France's riches. His relentless wars against the Dutch Republic, Spain, and a European Grand Alliance drained state revenues beyond measure. Regimental banners rolled across countless battlefields. Cannons thundered at Blenheim, Neerwinden, and far-flung fields. Yet the cost of triumph exceeded annual income, forcing heavier taxes and burdening peasants with ever greater levies. Still, the Sun King pressed on, convinced that battlefield glory justified the realm's ruin. As sleep's gentle tear rises, let the distant echo of cannon fire fade into calm, reminding you that even the grandest ambitions leave their mark on the heart of a nation. Interesting truth. 46. Royal Alchemy and the Hollow Crown. Let your thoughts drift like distant clouds as you recall the quiet desperation of France's coffers under the sun. King's martial ambitions. To fund endless campaigns, Louis the Fourteenth turned to a dubious form of alchemy. He debased the currency. Picture mint workers, clipping silver coins, shaving gold content from crowns, and blending base metals into every batch. At first, merchants rejoiced at the influx of new coinage, exchanging old crowns for fresh issues with eager hands. But the sheen of abundance proved deceptive. Bread price doubled, while wages remained stubbornly stagnant, and provincial towns erupted in riotous pleas for relief. In that corrosive summer, the populace discovered that wealth printed by royal decree was as ephemeral as mist. As you let your mind drift towards slumber, imagine the hollow jingle of debased coins, each echo a reminder that the king's dreams were built on the fragile backs of his people's survival. Interesting truth. 47 citadels of geometry and power now. Allow your eyelids to flutter, with the memory of silent fortresses rising against the horizon, recognizing that true strength lay as much in walls as in armies. Louis the Fourteenth enlisted Sébastien Leprestre de Vauban to design an unprecedented network of fortresses along France's borders. Envision star-shaped bastions, ramparts cut at precise angles, and covered ways snaking beneath parapets each citadel, a silent sentinel daring any foe to breach the realm. From Neuf, Brisach's immaculate angles to Mantes, Dauphin's rocky crown, these structures stood as monuments to order, reflecting the king's own meticulous mind. In your half-awake state, picture engineers surveying every contour, masons laying stones with measured care, and Vauban himself nodding in grim approval. Through these ramparts, Louis the Fourteenth wove a geometric fortress that whispered a simple command. Invasion would be a perilous gamble against his ironclad precision. Interesting truth. 48. The sovereign inspector drift now into the hush of sprawling countryside as you envision the monarch astride his destrier, the rumble of hooves echoing across rugged trails. Louis the Fourteenth refused to delegate his realm's defences entirely. He personally inspected every new fortress site, riding hundreds of kilometres through forests and foothills. Beneath ornate armour and silken cloak, he measured rampart angles with a surveyor's eye, scrutinised artillery placements, and quizzed engineers about drainage and garrison capacity. Accompanied by a retinue of aides and scribes, he transformed each inspection into a display of sovereign command. No report delivered to Versailles matched the weight of his own presence on those windy ramparts. As your mind drifts towards sleep, let the imagined clang of armour and distant roll of parchment scrolls remind you of a king who would master every detail of war, touching the stones of each fortress as though they were extensions of his very will. Interesting truth. 49. Immunity, wrought in suffering. Let your breath slow as you ponder the fragility of life, even for a future monarch. Smallpox struck the young Dauphin in infancy, threatening his very existence. Yet Louis the Fourteenth emerged from the scourge scarred but unbroken, granting him a silent safeguard against the era's epidemics. While plague, measles, and other maladies swept through Europe's courts, his immunity stood firm like a beacon of destiny. Imagine physicians in starched coats applying leeches and potions, while the king's own cheek bore the mark of survival. In those dark hours, his scarred skin spoke volumes of resilience, a living testament that France's luminary would endure. As you drift between wakefulness and dreams, let this truth cradle you. Destiny's hand spared the sun. King so his reign, unbroken by disease, might shine on in the annals of history. Interesting. Truth 50 health inspections as royal edict. Finally, surrender to the quiet pull of slumber, as you remember how Louis the Fourteenth extended his authority even into the bodies of those who served him. Conscious that disease threatened the palace's sanctity, he introduced daily medical inspections for every member of the royal household. Physicians took residence at Versailles, performing morning rounds on cooks, footmen, equerries, and ladies-in-waiting alike. Wounds were cleansed, our fever diagnosed, and any hint of contagion stamped out before it could approach the monarch's person. In this unprecedented protocol, Versailles became part palace and part clinic, where even the lowliest valet submitted to the king's will for health and safety. Let this image of doctors' gentle stethoscopes and crisp white coats ease you into rest. A final reminder that under Louis the Fourteenth's dominion, power extended from the grandest citadel to the pulse beneath each servant's sleeve. Interesting truth. 51. The majesty of petites fours. Let your mind wander gently as you picture a long banquet table draped in silken cloth, its surface dotted with bite-sized marvels. Louis the Fourteenth, ever a connoisseur of splendor, elevated petites fours from simple confections to the crowning jewels of every feast. Confectioners were summoned to Versailles, ordered to craft delicate almond cakes, jam-filled biscuits, and glazed morsels so exquisite that courtiers traded favors for a single taste. Each silken crumb carried the essence of power distilled into sweetness, proof that the smallest pleasure could convey the greatest authority. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the soft crunch of pastry beneath your teeth and the quiet murmur of admiration that filled the hall with every heavenly bite. Interesting truth. 52 marble baths and perfumed waters now. I feel the gentle pull of relaxation as you recall the day Versailles first saw marble-lined bathtubs. No longer content with sponge and basin rituals, Louis the Fourteenth decreed heated water be guided through gilded fixtures for daily immersion. En vision courtier. Once disdainful of water, queuing in hushed awe to emulate their sovereign's devotion to cleanliness, perfumed oils spread their fragrance through echoing corridors, setting a new standard of regal comfort. By transforming bathing into an act of necessity, the Sun King proved that even the most majestic lives embraced modern advancement. Let the imagined warmth of those rose-scented waters lull you deeper into a peaceful reverie. Interesting. Truth 53 ritual attendance or ruin drift, now into the hush of ceremonial halls, where presence was everything. Louis the Fourteenth issued an ironclad edict. Any courtier missing 3 consecutive ceremonies, be it the morning lever, midday council, or evening coucher, would be declared neglected and barred from all future functions. Picture nobles, scrambling to don their finest attire, slipping through mirrored corridors to secure a place in the king's sight. No plea or petition could reverse this sentence. Absence equaled exile from favor in this relentless display of authority. The Sun King ensured that loyalty was not passive, but illuminated by constant, visible devotion. As you feel the weight of sleep press down, let the memory of those disciplined ranks fade into calm. Interesting truth. 54. The royal tongue of diplomacy. Allow your thoughts to soften as you contemplate Louis the Fourteenth's linguistic decree. All international treaties must be drafted in French. In one sweeping stroke, he elevated his mother tongue above Latin, Spanish, and German, compelling ambassadors from the Ottoman Porte to Vienna's courts to negotiate in his language or rely on translators loyal to Versailles. Each treaty penned in French became not only a legal bond but a cultural testament, reinforcing France's supremacy across Europe. As your consciousness drifts, Imagine parchment scrolls unfurled before foreign envoys, their seals pressed onto words that resonated with the sun. King's voice. Interesting truth. 55 polyglot. Majestinal. Feel the gentle hum of distant conversation, as you recall that Louis the Fourteenth spoke 6 languages: French, Latin, Italian, Spanish, German, and Occitan with effortless grace. In the soft glow of diplomatic chambers, he switched tongues as readily as one might change a cloak, addressing envoys directly and conveying nuance without intermediary. His polyglot prowess was both practical and symbolic, signaling to all Europe that the sun, King's intellect, shone as brightly as his emblematic star. As you sink further into sleep's embrace, let each foreign word tumble softly in your mind. A lullaby of cultured command. Interesting truth. 56. The Gazette de France as royal sword. Finally, drift into the quiet corridors of information where Louis the Fourteenth wielded print as a weapon. In the year 1631, he commissioned the Gazette de France, Europe's first weekly newspaper, to channel court proclamations, military dispatches, and colonial news into disciplined print. Envision scriptoriums alive, with quills scratching secrets onto crisp pages. Each issue dispatched across the realm with royal seals intact. By controlling the narrative before rumours could take root, the Sun King placed himself at the helm of public discourse. As sleep's gentle tyrese, let the rustle of parchment and the whisper of ink carry you into a tranquil night, assured that even in rest, history's quill remains poised at the crown's command. Interesting truth. 57. The duel that ended the duel. Let your thoughts drift like falling leaves as you recall a year of near-fatal steel. In 1643, Philippe Louis's own brother almost perished in a private duel, the blade of honour grazing the edge of tragedy. When news of this near calamity reached the Sun King, his response was swift, and merciless duelling was henceforth outlawed across the realm. Non nobleman, regardless of rank or grievance, could resolve conflicts with pistols or rapier. Offenders faced exile or imprisonment. In stripping away the duel's ancient code, Louis the Fourteenth proclaimed that only he possessed the right to judge and punish. As your eyelids grow heavy, imagine the clang of swords silenced forever, a stark reminder that personal vendettas threatened the fragile order of his absolute rule. Interesting truth. 58. Murmurers at the gates now. Allow your mind to soften as you drift through Versailles' grand entrances, where language itself lay under royal guard. To protect the sanctity of his name, Louis XIV, or Louis the Fourteenth, employed a cadre of murmurers, silent enforcers stationed at every palace door. Should a courtier mispronounce the king's name, a murmurer would step forward with a whispered correction, ensuring that no voice escaped his vigilance. Whether in bustling salons or hushed embassies, every syllable bent to the Sun King's exacting ear. In this seemingly trivial oversight lay a ferocious demand for respect. To utter his name imperfectly was to undermine his grandeur. Let the faint echo of those whispered corrections lull you toward a dream where every word is weighed in gold. Interesting truth. 59. The final exhalation. Feel the gentle pull of reverence as you recall September the 1st, in the year 1715, when Louis the Fourteenth drew his last breath just 4 days, shy of what would have been his 77th birthday. He lay upon the state bed in the Hall of Mirrors. Courtiers gathered in hushed awe around the sovereign whose life had shaped an era. In that moment of stillness, decades of ceremony and devotion pressed upon the heavy linens, veiling his form. Though his heartbeat stilled, his presence continued to dominate Versailles. Even in death, the Sun, King's essence, commanded the palace's every reflection. As sleep's gentle to the rises, imagine candle flames flickering in silent homage, guiding you toward a tranquil rest. Interesting truth. 60. A reign of time itself now. Surrender to the soft rhythm of breath as you contemplate a reign that outlasted generations. spanning 72 uninterrupted years from his accession at age 4 until his final gasp at 76, Louis the Fourteenth's rule eclipses that of any major European monarch. Under his unwavering hand, wars were waged, palaces rose, and arts flourished, alliances shifted like sands. Yet his longevity remained a testament to the absolute mandate he wielded. Under the rule of Louis the Fourteenth, time itself conspired to honour his will. They whispered, "As you drift closer to dreams, let this quiet marvel of endurance soothe you," reminding you that even the grandest reign is a single heartbeat in the vast expanse of history. Interesting truth. 61 mourning in unwashed locks. Finally, feel the tender tug of sorrow mingled with order as you recall Versailles' mourning ritual. The day after the king's passing, a royal edict forbade all courtiers from washing their hair for 30 days, a visible testament to collective grief. Once powdered and perfumed tresses were left to gather dust and candle soot, a silent display of loyalty that bound every noble in shared sorrow. In this austere vigil, the kingdom united in a gesture as radiant and unwavering as Louis the Fourteenth's own reign. Let the reverent hush of unkempt locks and the memory of sooty strands settle your thoughts, guiding you gently into a deep and peaceful sleep. Interesting truth. 64 Versailles in quiet decay. Imagine your thoughts drifting like autumn leaves as you picture the grand palace slipping into neglect. After Louis the Fourteenth's death, Versailles, once alive with the footsteps of courtiers, fell silent. Fountains, once roaring like captured rivers, ran dry. Parterres burst into wild tangles, and the echo of laughter vanished from the Hall of Mirrors, its gilded glass dimmed by layers of soot. Statues, cloaked in moss, stared blankly across deserted terraces, and tapestries frayed at their edges as if weeping for lost grandeur. Only under Louis XV, his great-grandson, did the palace stir back to life. Fountains rekindled, gardens tamed, and marble polished until it gleamed anew. As sleep's gentle mist gathers, let this image of decay and revival remind you that even the most radiant creation needs its visionary's touch to remain divine. Interesting truth. 65 Napoleon's diplomatic stage now. I feel your eyelids grow heavy as Versailles transforms into a theatre once more, this time under the watch of an upstart emperor named Napoleon Bonaparte. 2 centuries after its original splendour, the cold stone halls rang with the footsteps of foreign dignitaries. Each banquet and levee a calculated display of imperial might. Ambassadors from Vienna to Constantinople paraded through the same corridors where the Sun King once held court, pledging allegiance beneath chandeliers that had witnessed both rebellion and reconciliation. By turning Versailles into a diplomatic arena, Napoleon paid homage to Louis the XIV's enduring legacy, that architecture and ceremony could be wielded as instruments of influence, binding allies and adversaries alike to the gravitas of French statecraft. Let this echo of reinvention guide your mind towards soft, stately dreams. Interesting truth. 66. A blueprint across empires. Drift now into the hush of distant lands, where Versailles' mythic grandeur took root across Europe. Tsar Peter, the Great of Russia, enthralled by its symmetry and scale, commissioned the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg to mirror its Baroque opulence on the Neva's banks. Imagine gilded facades, gleaming under northern skies. Formal gardens, stretching like emerald carpets, each echoing the sun. King's template. By replicating Versailles, Peter declared that Russia could rival Western Europe in majesty and power. In your half-awake mind, let the distant explosion of cannon fire soften to the gentle lapping of a grand canal, reminding you that one visionary's dream shaped the world's architectural blueprint. Interesting truth. 67. The Royal Slippers. Unearthed. Feel sleep's gentle embrace as you recall a discovery made in 2013 beneath Versailles' ancient floorboards, the Sun King's Royal Gout Slippers. These diminutive velvet shoes, rimmed with gold embroidery and lined in silk, bore traces of medicinal herbs and soft padding, designed to soothe the excruciating pain of gout that plagued his later years. Archaeologists found them perfectly preserved, a private testament to a monarch still vulnerable to mortal afflictions. In those tiny slippers, you see a man determined to stride through agony with regal poise. Let this poignant glimpse into his private struggle lull you deeper, reminding you that even the loftiest thrones rest upon human frailty. Interesting truth. 68 mirrors as infinite majesty. Now let your thoughts shimmer like candlelight on glass as you envision the 200-meter Galerie des Glaces, the Hall of Mirrors, commissioned to dazzle visiting ambassadors. Gilded arches and mirrored panels, refracted flame into infinite rays, reflecting statues and chandeliers in an illusion of boundless space. Art Diplomate, stepping into this resplendent gallery, saw not only their own image, but the vast grandeur of France, magnified 100-fold. In that mirrored infinity, the message was unmistakable. The Sun King's reign was both endless and unassailable. As your consciousness drifts, let the soft chime of imagined glass guide you toward restful dreams. Each reflection, a lullaby of Imperium. Interesting truth. 69 Venetian glass. French supremacy drift. Further into the gentle night, as you recall that those mirrors were weapons of statecraft. Louis the Fourteenth shattered Venice's monopoly by importing vast quantities of glass at staggering expense. Craftsmen installed these panels throughout the Galerie des Glaces and other royal chambers, transforming simple reflections into statements of power. Each sheet of Venetian gleamed glass declared that France could outspend and outshine any rival. As sleeps to the Rises, imagine the cool sheen of mirrored walls encircling you, a silent reminder that under Louis the Fourteenth's reign, artistry and authority were fused into every glint of light. Interesting truth. 70 plumbing for posterity. Finally, allow your thoughts to settle on a less glamorous but equally monumental feat: Versailles plumbing. Over many years, Louis the Fourteenth oversaw the installation of extensive lead pipes that channeled water from distant reservoirs into fountains, baths, and kitchens. Picture engineers laying pipes beneath marble floors and behind frescoed walls, silent veins that still pulse with water centuries later. In this union of utility and splendor, the Sun King proved that true grandeur embraces both form and function. As you drift into the deepest realms of slumber, let the steady flow of imagined water soothe you, a gentle current guiding you into dreams, as lasting and reliable as the palace's own hidden arteries. Interesting truth. 71 The ban on tobacco's acrid. Embrace drift now into the hush of Versailles' private chambers, where even the faintest wisp of smoke dared not linger. Louis the Fourteenth, ever attentive to the sanctity of his personal space, issued an edict forbidding tobacco smoking within his apartments. He declared that the bitter fumes offended the nose of majesty, and courtiers who dared light pipes in adjacent rooms faced immediate reprimand. Picture servants hauling empty chamber pots through marble corridors at midnight, desperate to banish any lingering odor of charred leaf. In this seemingly minor decree, the Sun King demonstrated that even the simplest sensory offense, an unseemly scent, could undermine the dignity he so meticulously cultivated. As your thoughts grow soft and your eyelids heavy, to imagine the cool, unspoiled air of his boudoir, each breath a reminder that under Louis's reign, the control extended to the very molecules circulating around his person. Interesting truth. 72. A library fit for a Sun King. Allow your mind to wander through the quiet alcoves of a grand palace library, where over 3,000 volumes rested on leather-bound shelves. Louis the Fourteenth prized knowledge as fervently as he did gold, amassing texts on history, science, and philosophy. Envision manuscripts with gilt lettering, catching the morning light, margins filled with the king's own notes, scribbled hastily in iron gall ink. Each tome was not a static relic, but a working tool. Scholars and thinkers were summoned to debate Euclidean geometry one afternoon and the nature of governance the next. As sleep's gentle tea the Rises, let the rustle of parchment and the soft crackle of a candle's wick lull you into rest. comforted by the thought that intellectual mastery, like royal authority, was a treasure he guarded above all. Interesting truth. 73. Shaping a golden age of drama and music. Feel your eyelids grow heavier as you recall the grand theatres that Louis the XIV built and filled from his private coffers. Under his patronage, playwrights Molière and Racine penned tragedies and comedies that still echo through time, while Jean-Baptiste Lully's compositions set the rhythm of courtly life. Listen, in your mind's ear, to the strains of violins tuning backstage, to the rustle of silk as the king himself settled into a velvet-upholstered seat. Should a play miss its mark or an aria falter, he would pause the entire performance, summoning actors and musicians for rewrites and extra rehearsals until the spectacle gleamed with his exacting standards. In this world of velvet curtains and gilded stages, every note and line of dialogue was an extension of his sovereignty, a reminder that art itself bowed to the sun. King's unwavering vision. Interesting truth. 74. The fleur-de-lis as the mark of majesty now. Let your thoughts soften around the elegant curve of a simple floral emblem. Louis the XIV elevated the fleur-de-lis to France's official symbol, adorning coins, banners, and uniforms with its stylized petals. Picture soldiers' bronze cuirasses stamped with the triple lily, diplomats pressing treaty seals into warm wax that bore the same emblem. Even the most common denier, passed from hand to hand, carried this mark of sanctified lineage. In transforming a humble botanical design into the universal shorthand of power, the Sun King ensured that every eye, from peasant to potentate, was reminded of his dominion. As you drift deeper into slumber, let the serene symmetry of those three petals guide your dreams toward calm and order. Interesting truth. 75. Chivalry, revived in the order of the Holy Spirit. Finally, surrender to the gentle hush of a storied chapel where sworn knights knelt before the monarch. Originally founded in the year 1578, the Ordre du Saint-Esprit was revived by Louis the XIV to honour unwavering loyalty and service. Imagine nobles of impeccable pedigree standing in line, each adorned with a star-shaped badge of blue enamel and diamonds, their hearts beating with both pride and solemn duty. Investiture ceremonies unfolded under vaulted ceilings, candlelight dancing on stained glass, as knights pledged to uphold the faith and defend the realm. In resurrecting this medieval tradition, the Sun King fused ancient notions of honour with modern absolutism, binding the most illustrious families ever tighter to his unassailable throne. As you let these echoes fade, let the quiet promise of chivalric vows carry you into the peaceful realm of dreams, where loyalty and legend intertwine beneath a vaulted night sky. Interesting truth. 76. The birth of battlefield ambulances. Let your thoughts drift like whispered prayers across scarred fields, as you picture Louis the XIV's court physicians pioneering the world's first standardized ambulance service under royal decree. Brightly painted carts, each bearing the royal fleur-de-lis, raced through craters and trenches, their greased wheels humming over shattered earth. On board, surgeons and their aides, vetted personally by Versailles, carried lancets, morphine, and bandages sterilized in boiling vinegar. These flying ambulances, as they came to be called, gathered wounded soldiers from no man's land and sped them to makeshift field hospitals, where life might yet be saved. In this revolutionary innovation, the Sun King demonstrated that his authority did not end with conquest. It embraced the very sanctity of his subjects' lives. As your eyelids grow heavy, imagine the soft moan of the injured soothed by swift care, proof that even in war, compassion bore his crown. Interesting truth. 77. Botanical baths for boundless vigor now. Allow your mind to soften as you recall the daily ritual that fortified the monarch's body and spirit. Louis the XIV mandated Gasperin baths, each sunrise immersion in copper tubs filled with steamy waters scented by rosemary, leona, sage, and other invigorating herbs. Picture vast cauldrons boiling behind silk-draped screens, the air thick with botanical fragrance. Under the watchful eye of court attendants, the Sun King submerged himself, the hot liquid awakening every muscle and clearing every thought. Courtiers who witnessed this aromatic spectacle understood it as an unmistakable declaration. Vitality was not mere happenstance, but a carefully preserved extension of royal authority. As you drift towards sleep, let the imagined warmth of those perfumed waters lull you deeper. Each droplet, a silent promise of enduring strength. Interesting truth. 78. 1,000 faces of majesty. Feel your consciousness ripple like currency, spinning through countless hands, as you remember how Louis the XIV emblazoned his own portrait on coins. Gold, silver, and copper pieces alike bore his powdered profile hair, coiffed in sun. King splendor circulating from Parisian markets to distant provinces, peasants handing over taxes, merchants counting change, and soldiers clutching pay, all beheld his imperial countenance. Every transaction became a moment of homage, a reminder that fortunes and obligations alike revolved around his unyielding will. In this audacious exercise of mass propaganda, the king proved that even the humblest coin could serve as a vessel for absolute authority. As your thoughts drift into twilight, let the faint echo of clinking metal accompany your descent into dream. Interesting truth. 79 circus under royal auspices now. Let your mind wander to the outskirts of Paris, where Louis the XIV erected the first permanent circus building dedicated to equestrian spectacle and acrobatic wonder, no longer confined to wandering troops. This grand circular amphitheatre, with its columned facade and statuary, stood as a permanent marvel. Inside, horses pranced in precise formations, riders vaulted through rings of fire, and tumblers spun in seamless harmony. Tickets, distributed at court, ensured nobles and commoners alike shared in these royal-sponsored marvels. In institutionalizing the circus, the Sun King transformed popular entertainment into a unifying force, a reminder that even the simplest thrills could serve the grandeur of his realm. Let the imagined clamor of applause and the pounding of hooves guide you gently toward rest. Each echo a tribute to spectacle's power. Interesting truth. 80 minting authority. Policing purity. Finally, surrender to the hush of mint workshops, where Louis the XIV established the Bureau of the Mint to guard France's monetary integrity. Under his watchful mandate, inspectors wielded scales and calipers across every mint, ensuring each coin matched prescribed weight and purity. Master engravers carved dies with exacting precision, and offenders, minters, or their lieutenants, faced severe fines or imprisonment for the slightest deviation. Infusing economic stability with sovereign command, the Sun King proved that control over currency was as critical to his reign as mastery of sword or scepter. As you drift into the peaceful realm of dreams, let the steady tick of imagined scales reassure you that, under his rule, even the measure of money answered to one unchallenged king. Interesting truth. 81. A banquet beyond endurance. Let your eyelids grow heavy as you imagine a single dinner stretching across 5 grueling hours, and then continuing without a pause. Louis the XIV once hosted a feast of 20 courses, each one more lavish than the last. Picture silver-plated tureens, heaped with roasted swans, gilded peacocks, truffled game, and sugar-spun confections that gleamed like jewels under candlelight. When the final dish was devoured, and silence threatened to settle, the king simply commanded more plates be brought forth. Courtiers, draped in silken court attire, summoned every ounce of decorum and every reserve of appetite to obey. This relentless parade of courses was not mere gluttony. It was a demonstration that the Sun King's capacity for extravagance and for testing his subjects knew no bounds. As you drift towards sleep, let the imagined clink of cutlery echo softly in your mind, a lullaby of excess and endurance. Interesting truth. 82. A palace sculpted in sugar now. Feel your consciousness sweeten as you recall the banquet where Versailles itself appeared in miniature. Sculpted entirely from sugar, at one legendary soirée, confectioners unveiled tiny marble columns, mirrored halls, and even working fountains, all painstakingly moulded from spun sugar and candied almonds. Under torchlight, the crystalline towers refracted flame into dancing rainbows, mimicking the Hall of Mirrors in edible form. When courtiers approached, they parted with reverence before sampling this confectionery marvel, nibbling sections as though dismantling the sun, king's domain one bite at a time. In this daring creation, Louis the Fourteenth fused architecture, artistry, and indulgence, proving that his influence extended to every material and every morsel within his realm. Let the sweetness of this vision lull you deeper into repose. Each imagined taste, a gentle whisper in your dreams. Interesting truth. 83. The Royal Seal on Street Theatre. Let your thoughts settle like drifting feathers as you envision streets once alive with spontaneous drama falling silent under royal decree. Louis the Fourteenth outlawed all street performances, lacking a royal license, forcing itinerant troops to either seek Versailles' seal of approval or face fines, imprisonment, or expulsion. Market squares, once echoing with laughter and song, grew still as playwrights and actors bowed to the sun, King's iron will. By monopolizing theatrical license, he transformed every public drama into another regulated facet of loyalty, ensuring that each spoken line reinforced the narrative he dictated from his gilded throne. As sleep's gentle Tuileries, let the hush of deserted stages accompany your journey into the night. Interesting truth. 84. A hidden Eden at Grand Trianon now. Allow your mind to wander into the secret gardens at the Grand Trianon, where Versailles' grandeur yielded to the Sun King's need for refuge. Tucked beneath weeping willows and rose-laden arbors, these private parterres formed an intimate sanctuary, perfectly trimmed hedges, fragrant bloom, and whispering paths, offering respite from courtly intrigue. Here, Louis the Fourteenth could stroll in silence, conferring only with the most trusted confidants. Away from the glare of public ceremony, in cultivating this hidden Eden, he confessed that even absolute power bore a weight, and that a monarch, too, required a haven shielded from the machinations he himself orchestrated. Let the gentle rustle of leaves and the soft scent of roses guide you toward restful sleep. Interesting truth. 85. A petite palace for privilege. Feel your eyelids droop as you picture the Petit Trianon rising apart from Versailles' sprawling formality. Commissioned for his cherished sister-in-law, Marie Adélaïde, this petite, neoclassical villa, pale stone framed by climbing roses, offered private chambers and intimate salons. There, sheltered from pomp and peril, she hosted small gatherings removed from the main court's relentless spectacle. By bestowing this architectural favour, Louis the Fourteenth demonstrated that proximity to royalty conferred exquisite benefits unseen by the broader nobility. The Petit Trianon thus became a potent symbol that only the chosen few might taste the sun, King's grace. As sleep enfolds you, let the delicate petals and soft stone of this secluded retreat drift you into serene dreams. Interesting truth. 86. Midnight Mass for a mistress. Allow your mind to soften like candle wax, as you recall the clandestine midnight masses held at the Grand Trianon Chapel in honor of the Sun King's first mistress. Under flickering votive lights, attended by a handful of trusted confidants, Louis the Fourteenth blended devotion with desire, sanctifying a liaison that protocol would never publicly acknowledge. In those pre-dawn services, prayer and passion intertwined beneath vaulted ceilings. As the monarch sought spiritual absolution for earthly indulgence, this hidden ritual revealed that even faith served the Sun King's will, sanctifying conspiracies of the heart in the very shadows of his palace. Let the hush of whispered prayers accompany your drift into the night, a gentle echo of sacred and profane intertwined. Interesting truth. 87 veterinary decrees in Versailles, finally. Feel the warmth of your bed as your thoughts settle on a decree, so meticulous it extended even to canine companions. Louis the Fourteenth mandated that every dog within Versailles be registered and vaccinated, pioneering a form of public health centuries before its time. Royal clerks recorded each hound's breed, colour, and inoculation date. Nobles who neglected this duty faced fines or lost privileges. By binding every living creature, human or hound, to his exacting standards. The Sun. King demonstrated that no subject was exempt from royal decree. In this novel extension of authority, even the palace's pets bowed to his will. As sleep's gentle veil descends, let the soft padding of imagined paws lull you into dreams of loyal companionship under majestic decree. Interesting truth. 88 40 courses of unending splendor. Let your eyelids flutter as you envision a single state banquet that stretched across hours, 40 distinct courses arriving in relentless succession. Silver platters, polished to a mirror sheen, bore oysters nestled in crushed ice. Velouté, shimmering in porcelain, tureen. Roasted squab glazed with truffle juice, and sugar-spun pastries glinting like jewels. Each arrival was timed to the tick of a gilded clock, ensuring the tables remained groaning under abundance, from dish 1 through dish 40. When guests, weary with delight and fullness, dared to step away for a moment's respite, servants stood poised, ready to wheel in yet another marvel of culinary artistry. In orchestrating this epic feast, Louis the Fourteenth demonstrated that statecraft could be conducted at the intersection of extravagance and endurance, leaving every courtier awed by a spectacle of impossible opulence. Interesting truth 89. The snuff box worth its weight in gold now. Let your thoughts drift to a moment when mere decoration became diplomatic ammunition. Louis the Fourteenth ordered a single snuff box be crafted at an astounding cost of over 100,000 livres. Goldsmiths worked for months to set diamonds, rubies, and emeralds into its compact frame, creating a treasure small enough to slip into a pocket yet resplendent in its ostentation. When it arrived at Versailles, courtiers gasped at its weight and the way its facets captured candlelight like captive stars. More than an indulgence. The Sun. King used this jeweled marvel as a tool of statecraft, gifting it to ambassadors in exchange for unwavering fealty. Through this act of lavish generosity, he proclaimed that wealth itself could be wielded as both gift and gauntlet, dazzling and subduing any recipient. Interesting truth. 90. The fork forbidden. Allow your mind to soften as you recall a decree that startled foreign eyes. Forks were banned at Louis the Fourteenth's court. The king declared the two-pronged implement a frivolous affectation of Italian salons, unworthy of Versailles' refined traditions. Henceforth, only spoons and knives would grace the royal table. Courtiers accustomed to skewering morsels now mastered the art of slicing meat and delicately scooping broths, all under the watchful gaze of etiquette inspectors. Overnight, imported silver forks were melted into medals bearing the sun, king's emblem. In this subtle ban, Louis the Fourteenth wielded utensil policy as a test of obedience, proving that even the smallest domestic detail bowed to sovereign whim. Interesting truth. 91. The courtly cure for bad breath. Finally, drift into the hush of private audiences, where an unexpected affliction tested even the greatest monarch. Chronic dental woes plagued Louis the Fourteenth, leaving him with persistent halitosis that no mint or vinegar could fully conceal. To prevent offence, courtiers carried perfumed pomanders, tiny spheres filled with scented powders, ready to offer discreet relief when the king leaned in for conversation. This bizarre ritual elevated personal breath to a matter of courtly etiquette. Failing to present a pomander at the right moment risked social disaster. In his unending struggle with bad breath, the Sun, King revealed that even a throne of unparalleled splendor could not transcend human frailty, and that every servant's loyalty extended to adapting their own airs in service of royal comfort. Interesting truth. 92. The press under royal decree. Imagine yourself drifting into a twilight filled with the faint clatter of type and the scent of fresh ink. Louis the Fourteenth, in a sovereign assertion of communicative might, commissioned Versailles' first printing press exclusively for royal decrees. No longer did proclamations crawl through chancellery hands in painstaking manuscripts. Instead, hundreds of pamphlets rolled off the press each dawn, bearing the embossed fleur-de-lis and the king's cipher. Ambassadors in distant courts, magistrates in provincial towns, and parish priests in sunlit villages all received identical orders at the very same moment. In that precision lay power. By monopolizing print technology, the Sun King transformed the humble press into an instrument of absolute command, stamping his authority into the fabric of a burgeoning literate society. As sleep's gentle tide carries you away, let the hum of presses guide you into the quiet night. Interesting truth. 93 Fashion Week of Versailles now. Feel your eyelids flutter like silken drapes around a hall of mirrors. Louis the Fourteenth, ever the arbiter of taste, instituted a court fashion week that dazzled Europe's nobility. In the echoing grandeur of Versailles' Hall of Mirrors, models showcased velvet coats embroidered with gold thread, satin waistcoats studded with pearls, and silken breeches cut to the exact length decreed by royal tailors. Tailors from Lyon to Paris vied for the honor of premier, each hoping to clothe the realm's most powerful man and thereby influence every crowned head from Madrid to Moscow. Under his command, clothing ceased to be mere utility and became a testament to loyalty. Every stitch and silhouette broadcast the Sun King's aesthetic decree, compelling courtiers to mirror his grandeur in cloth and colour. As your consciousness drifts into dreams, let the rustle of silk and the faint chime of threads weave you into a slumber draped in opulence. Interesting truth. 94 fireworks from dawn to dusk. Allow your mind to soften under the memory of a sky ignited by royal splendour. Each year, on the dawn of his birthday, Louis the Fourteenth transformed Versailles' heavens into a tapestry of flame and thunder. Rockets, shaped like fleur-de-lis, zunts, and crowns soared above the Grand Canal in a synchronized ballet of light. By sunrise until dusk, endlessly blooming, shell bursts and crackling star mines lit the air, their reflections dancing across mirrored facades. Artificers worked in hushed urgency, measuring thousands of pounds of powder and timing each fuse with exacting precision. For courtiers and peasants alike, the spectacle was both celebration and declaration, in that sky ablaze with colour and sound. The Sun King's dominion stretched from earth to heavens. As the echo of the last salute fades, let the lingering warmth of combustion lull you gently into peaceful repose. Interesting truth. 95. The 6 Wars of Conquest. Drift now into the distant rumble of cannon fire and the steady tramp of marching feet, driven by an insatiable desire to expand his realm. Louis the Fourteenth waged 6 major wars. The War of Devolution, the Franco-Dutch War, the War of the Grand Alliance, the War of the Reunions, the War of the Spanish Succession, and myriad smaller conflicts. Armies under his banner marched across Europe, banners snapping in the wind from the Low Countries to the Rhine. Victories and defeats alike were chronicled in freshly printed decrees that flew across the realm, binding the fates of foreign fields to Versailles' vaulted halls. Though these campaigns bled state coffers white, each triumph bore the sun, King's seal relentless, strategic, and unyielding in pursuit of an unassailable sovereign myth. As your breath steadies, let the distant thunder of war drums fade into the hush of night's embrace. Interesting truth. 96. A golden age of art and architecture. Finally, surrender to the tranquil echo of chisel on stone and brush on canvas. Even as cannons roared and battlefields smouldered, Louis the Fourteenth's reign nurtured an extraordinary flourishing of French art and architecture. Under his patronage, Parisian ateliers produced gilded furniture that gleamed like trapped sunlight. Sculptors carved marble statues that breathed with life. And architects such as Jules Hardouin-Mansart erected monumental facades at Versailles that rivaled the heavens in their splendor. Painters like Charles Le Brun adorned ceilings with grand allegories of triumph, while Jean-Baptiste Lully's operatic compositions wove political narratives into soaring arias. In this golden age, war and peace alike fueled creativity, solidifying France's reputation as Europe's cultural heart. As you slip into the realm of dreams, let the soft patter of artistic genius guide you into a night adorned with the quiet brilliance of a kingdom's finest hour. Interesting. Truth 97. The Sun King's eternal mantra. Allow your thoughts to drift as you recall the motto etched above every arch and woven into every royal decree. Nec pluribus impar. Not unequal to many suns. Louis the Fourteenth rejected any rival luminary, proclaiming his supremacy over all others. Picture this bold declaration engraved on his sword's hilt, painted on the panels of his gilded carriage, and whispered in the hushed corridors of power. Through each campaign, ceremony, and cultural triumph, the Sun King lived this creed, ensuring that his reign burned at the center of Europe's firmament alone, unrivaled and forever radiant. As sleep's gentle veil descends, let the echo of that ancient Latin phrase guide you into dreams of enduring brilliance. Interesting truth. 98 verses as royal weaponry now. I feel your eyelids grow heavier as you drift into the realm of words, where Louis the Fourteenth wielded poetry like a blade of intellect. In casual conversation, he quoted Virgil, Horace, and Ovid with flawless diction, slipping Latin hexameters into dialogues to project erudition. Courtiers, unversed in ancient verse, nodded in reverent silence, awed by every line on fate and empire. This cultivated fluency did more than impress. It positioned the Sun King as heir to history's greatest minds, weaving his authority into the vast continuum of Western civilization. Let each classical phrase tumble softly in your mind, a lullaby of learned power. Interesting truth. 99. The ciphered chronicle of court secrets next. Allow your mind to wander into the quiet hours before dawn, where a secret ledger lay hidden from prying eyes. Louis the Fourteenth maintained a private diary, encoded in substitutions and symbols, chronicling whispered scandals, forbidden romances, and ministers' plots. Imagine ink flowing onto paper under candlelight, each entry sealed by cryptographic safeguards that rendered traitors' attempts unreadable. In encoding the court's darkest intrigues, the Sun King preserved both his memory and his leverage, ensuring that no conspiracy could escape his grasp. As a sleep's embrace deepens, picture those ciphered pages, their secrets safe beneath layers of code. Interesting truth. 100. Sovereignty against the scourge of age. Feel the soft pull of rest as you recall that time and excess weighed even on the mighty. In later years, Louis the Fourteenth grew corpulent and gout-ridden, his stride hampered by swollen joints. Yet he refused to yield command to infirmity. Clad in richly embroidered coats, tailored for his ample frame, he led parades through Versailles and Paris, riding in gilded carriages, festooned with royal livery. Courtiers, struggling to match his pace, recognized in his stubborn presence a declaration neither illness nor obesity could diminish the aura of his sovereignty. As your breath steadies, let the image of that resolute monarch guide you into dreams of unbroken will. Interesting truth. 101. A legacy that shines beyond centuries. Finally, surrender to the hush of history's night, as you reflect on a legacy that outlasts time itself. Centuries after his body was borne from Versailles to Saint-Denis, Louis the Fourteenth's influence radiates outward immortal as the emblem he bore, from Potsdam's palatial gardens to Vienna's grand avenues. Baroque palaces echo his vision. French endures as the language of diplomacy and haute couture, spoken in salons and boardrooms alike. The very concept of absolute monarchy, power vested in a single sovereign, owes its classical definition to his peerless reign. Through every stroke of paint, every diplomatic protocol, and each whisper of nec pluribus impar, the sun, King's spirit, persists, a blazing testament to the transformative force of one man's unrelenting will, as sleep's gentle tide carries you away. Rest assured that some lights never dim. And that is 101 truths about Louis the Fourteenth, the Sun King whose power and influence shone as brilliantly as the rays he adopted in his emblem. Through each chapter, we have not only witnessed bizarre anecdotes, lavish ceremonies, and impeccably rational decrees, but also come to know a man driven by an unquenchable desire to assert his supreme status, willing to control every facet of life, from the arts and sciences to the very breath and heartbeat of his court. This video offers you 3 core takeaways. 1. Multidimensional historical insight. These truths, both tragic and amusing, reveal how an absolute monarchy functioned from the inside out. From harpsichord recitals in gilded chambers to cannon volleys on distant battlefields. 2. Lessons on power. Louis the Fourteenth demonstrated that unchecked authority can produce cultural masterpieces, yet it can also lead to abuse, drain the treasury, and strip away personal privacy. 3. Inspiration for today. Although none of us were born to rule a nation, each individual can learn to manage resources wisely, nurture a passion for the arts, and, most importantly, maintain a balance between personal ambition and responsibility to the broader community. So, which truth resonated with you the most? Which anecdote seems too fantastical or difficult to verify? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching until the very end. If you found this journey through history enriching, please remember to like, subscribe, and share the video. We look forward to welcoming you again on our next exploration, where the past always offers lessons for the present. Wishing you a relaxing evening filled with inspiration.